You think you're just watching a video, but this isn't just a playlist of horror stories. This is a record of things that shouldn't exist, and yet they do. 15 tales, 15 moments where people looked the wrong way, opened the wrong door, or stayed 1 minute too long in the dark. Some lived to tell, some didn't. You might be tempted to think these are just stories, but if that helps you sleep, go ahead. Just remember, fear doesn't need to be real to reach you. Sometimes it only needs your attention, and you've already given it that. As each story unfolds, listen closely. You may find something familiar, a sound you've heard before, a dream you've had, a detail you can't explain. That's not a coincidence. That's how it begins. Now, let's begin. The invitation came through a DM, slipped into my inbox like a secret. Exclusive party, 1 night only. You in? I'm Sophia, a 20-year-old college sophomore in Austin, Texas, always chasing the next thrill. The message was from an account I didn't recognize. Night Pulse with no profile pic, just a string of cryptic posts about unforgettable nights. My friends called it sketchy, but the address was in Westlake, the wealthiest part of town, a mansion known for legendary bashes. I imagined velvet ropes, champagne fountains, maybe a celebrity or two. I couldn't resist. I roped my best friend Mia into coming, promising her a night of glamour and chaos. She rolled her eyes but agreed, and we spent hours getting ready. Me in a sultry nurse costume, Mia as a glittering flapper, her sequins catching the light like stars. We drove through Austin's neon-lit streets, the city's pulse fading as we climbed into the hills. The mansion's iron gates loomed under the moonlight, music pulsing from within, a deep bass that vibrated in my chest. The air buzzed with excitement, but something felt off, like the house was watching us, its windows glinting like eyes. I shook it off, chalking it up to nerves, and we stepped inside. The party was a fever dream. Chandeliers glinting, bodies swaying, drinks flowing like rivers. The crowd was a mix of college kids, influencers, and older types in tailored suits. Their smiles too sharp, their eyes lingering too long. I felt a prickle on my neck like I was being sized up, but the music drowned it out. Mia grabbed my hand, pulling me to the dance floor, and for a moment, I let the rhythm take over. The mansion was a maze of opulence. Marble floors, velvet drapes, a DJ spinning tracks that made your bones hum. I set my drink down on a glass table, caught up in a whirlwind of selfies with Mia and some strangers who seemed too eager to pose. Their laughter was loud, but their eyes were cold, like they were playing a part. I scanned the room, catching a man in the corner, his eyes fixed on me. He was older, maybe 30, with a lean frame, dark hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a black blazer blending into the crowd, but his gaze was unrelenting. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just the vibe of the party, but he kept appearing, by the bar, near the dance floor, always just out of reach, his presence like a shadow I couldn't shake. I tried to focus on Mia, who was laughing with a group of girls, but the air felt heavier now, the music slowing to a hypnotic drone. Then he approached, his voice smooth as he said, "Your boyfriend's been trying to reach you. He's worried." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone about Ethan, my boyfriend, who was working late at his bartending gig. He said it's urgent. You can use my phone in a quiet room. I followed him, my heart racing, too naive to question why he knew Ethan's name. The music faded as we climbed a spiral staircase, the lights dimming with every step. The hallway was lined with closed doors, the sounds of the party muffled like we'd stepped into another world. My instinct screamed to turn back, but I ignored them, clutching my phone, which now had no signal. He led me to a bedroom, the door clicking shut behind us. The room was dimly lit, heavy with the scent of sandalwood. My head pounded like I'd run a marathon, the room spinning. I tried to dial Ethan, but my fingers felt like lead, the phone slipping from my hand. I collapsed on the bed, darkness swallowing me. The last thing I saw was his smile, cold and predatory, his eyes gleaming, like he'd won a prize. My thoughts fragmented, a single word echoing, drugged. I woke to Mia's voice, frantic, her hands wiping my stomach with a napkin. "Sophia, stay with me!" she yelled, her face pale, her sequined dress sparkling incongruously in the dim light. She'd found me in the room, the man pouring liquor on my stomach, licking it off while I was out. My skin crawled, nausea rising as I realized what he'd done. His lips on my skin, his hands too close. Mia had searched for me when I didn't return, checking bedrooms until she found us. She'd screamed, startling him, and he'd fled into the crowd, his blazer vanishing among the sea of bodies. I clung to her, sobbing, my nurse costume now a cruel irony, its fabric clinging to my skin like shame. Mia dragged me to the bathroom, locking the door, her hands shaking as she called Ethan. The party raged on below, oblivious to the nightmare we'd escaped, the bass thumping like a heartbeat. Ethan arrived within minutes, his face pale as Mia recounted the horror. He wrapped me in his jacket, guiding us through the crowd, their faces blurring into a haze of glitter and sweat. At urgent care, doctors confirmed I was okay, the drug in my drink causing no lasting harm. But the relief was fleeting. Days later, I got texts from an unknown number, random at first, then a photo of my torso with creepy messages. "You looked so peaceful." One read, followed by, "I'm still watching." My blood ran cold. I blocked the number, but new ones kept coming, each message bolder, like he was toying with me, savoring my fear. I changed my number, but the texts found me, as if he knew every move I made. I couldn't let it go. I dug into the party, scouring social media for a night pulse. The account was gone, but I found whispers in private forums, stories of exclusive events where people vanished, wallets emptied, lives upended. The mansion, I learned, was a rental, its owners a shell company with no traceable ties. I contacted the rental agency, but they claimed no record of the event. Mia and I went to the police, but with no name, no face, and a crowd of strangers. They had nothing to go on. I started noticing things. A car idling outside my apartment, a shadow moving too fast across the street. Was it him, or was I paranoid? The texts grew darker, describing my outfits, my routines, as if he was closer. Then I realized I confided in Mia, who never left my side, her fierce loyalty a lifeline. She pushed me to keep fighting, to trust my gut. I installed security cameras, changed my locks, and stopped posting online. But the fear lingered, a weight I couldn't shake. I learned the mansion had a history, rumors of secret societies, of predators using wealth as a mask. Was the man a lone creep or part of something bigger? A network hunting the naive? I'll never know, but Mia's quick thinking saved me that night. She saw what I didn't, acted when I couldn't. That party taught me to trust my instincts, to lean on friends who have your back. If a stranger knows too much, if a place feels wrong, run. Because some invitations aren't to a party. They're to a trap you might not escape. And once you're in, they don't always let you go. The cramped apartment in the Dallas suburbs was supposed to be my fresh start. I was 22, a barista named Sarah, sharing the place with my boyfriend, Nate, who worked night shifts at a warehouse. One evening, our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Carver gifted me an antique mirror, its frame carved with strange, twisting symbols. "It's been in this building forever," she said, her eyes darting nervously. I hung it in the living room, its cloudy glass reflecting the room in a distorted haze. That night, alone, I caught a flicker in the mirror, a shadow that wasn't mine. My skin prickled, but I brushed it off, blaming the late hour. As Nate left for work, the apartment felt too quiet, the silence heavy with an unspoken weight. I double-checked the locks, but the mirror's reflection seemed to watch me, its symbols glinting under the dim light. Around 1 a.m., the lights flickered, then died, plunging the apartment into darkness. The air grew thick, oppressive like a storm trapped indoors. I fumbled for my phone, its glow feeble against the void. The mirror loomed in the corner, its surface rippling, as if something stirred behind the glass. A faint hum vibrated through, the walls growing into a low, guttural pulse. I told myself it was just a power outage, but my heart raced, urging me to move. The apartment wasn't empty anymore. I could feel it. Something was awake, and it knew I was alone. The darkness pressed against me, thick and suffocating. I heard it then, a faint drip, drip, drip from the bathroom, like water leaking from a faucet, though no one was there. I grabbed a flashlight, its beam trembling in my hand, and crept toward the sound. The bathroom was empty, the sink dry, but the drip continued, now louder, like blood pulsing through a vein. A cold breath grazed my neck, and I spun, the flashlight, catching nothing but the mirror's glint down the hall. The symbols on its frame glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the drip. I backed away, heart slamming against my ribs. Suddenly the lights flared back on, then exploded in a shower of sparks, glass shards raining across the floor. The apartment plunged back into shadow, lit only by the weak glow of streetlights seeping through the blinds. In that dim light, I saw her, a small, hunched figure like the girl from The Ring standing in the corner of the living room, her long, matted hair veiling her face, utterly still. Her presence sucked the warmth from the room, her silhouette fraying at the edges like smoke held in place. Her fingers twitched, a slow, unnatural jerk, as if testing the air. I froze, my scream caught in my throat. The mirror reflected her, but her face was wrong, hollow, eyeless, a void where features should be. The drip became a whisper. My name hissed in a child's voice, sharp and accusing. She took a step, her head tilting at an impossible angle, and the floor creaked under an unseen weight. I stumbled back, my flashlight falling, its beam spinning wildly across the walls. My scream tore through the silence, raw and desperate. The figure vanished, dissolving into the air, and the lights flickered back on, steady as if nothing had happened. Glass crunched under my feet, the apartment eerily normal, but my body shook, my breath coming in gasps. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, and dialed Nate, but the call dropped, the signal dead. The mirror stood silent, its symbols dull, but I swore I saw a ripple in its glass, a faint outline of that child's form. I couldn't stay. I never wanted to be alone in that apartment again. I threw on a jacket and waited in the hallway, jumping at every sound until Nate's truck pulled up. He searched the apartment, finding nothing. No glass, no drip, no sign of her. "You're just stressed," he said, but his eyes lingered on the mirror, uneasy. I didn't sleep that night. Her image burned into my mind. Those twitching fingers, that hollow face. Days later, I confronted Mrs. Carver. She paled when I mentioned the mirror. "It belonged to a family here in the 80s, she whispered. "Their daughter, she drowned in that bathroom. They said she never left." My stomach dropped. I tore the mirror down, shoving it into storage, but the apartment never felt right. One evening, cleaning out a closet, I found a child's drawing tucked behind a baseboard. A crude sketch of a girl with long hair standing in a corner, with the words "I see you" scrawled in red. My blood ran cold. Was she still here, watching from the shadows? I moved out months later, but the fear lingers. I can't be alone at night without checking the corners, waiting for her to appear. Sometimes in new mirrors I catch a flicker, a small dark shape, waiting. Is she tied to me now? Or was it just that cursed place? I don't know, but I'll never hang an old mirror again. I was living in a busy city apartment building, the kind where you barely know your neighbors. It was a typical evening, and I was heading to my apartment on the 12th floor, taking the elevator as usual. My name's Mia, a 24-year-old graphic designer scraping by in the heart of a concrete jungle. The city never slept. Horns blaring, neon lights flashing, people rushing through crowded sidewalks like ants in a colony. After a grueling day at the office, my shoulders ached, my eyes burned from staring at screens, and all I wanted was to crash on my couch with a glass of wine. The apartment building was a towering beast of glass and steel, home to hundreds of strangers who passed each other with blank stares. The lobby buzzed with activity. Delivery guys, dog walkers, tenants juggling grocery bags, but it felt hollow, like everyone was just a shadow in someone else's story. I swiped my keycard, the glass doors hissing open, and trudged toward the elevator bank. The air was thick with the scent of cleaning solution and stale coffee, a reminder of the building's endless churn. I pressed the call button, the ding echoing in the empty hallway, and checked my phone. 6:47 p.m. Late enough for the city to feel alive, but too early for the night's dangers to creep in. Or so I thought. As I waited, a prickle ran down my neck like someone was watching from the shadows. I glanced around, but the lobby was empty, the security desk unmanned. The building had cameras everywhere, their red lights blinking like silent sentinels, but they offered little comfort. I'd heard stories, tenants harassed, packages stolen, strangers slipping through the cracks of a place too big to police. I shook it off, blaming my tired mind, but the unease lingered. A whisper that the city's pulse hid something darker. The elevator doors slid open and I stepped inside, unaware that I was about to walk into a nightmare that would change how I saw the world. The elevator hummed, its fluorescent light casting a sterile glow over the mirrored walls. I pressed the button for the 12th floor, the doors sliding shut with a soft thud, sealing me in a metal box that suddenly felt too small. As the elevator doors closed, a man stepped in just before they shut. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses despite the late hour. He didn't press a floor button, which struck me as odd. I glanced at him, my reflection distorted in his dark lenses, and forced a polite smile, the kind you give strangers in tight spaces. He didn't return it, his face a blank slate, his posture rigid like a statue come to life. The elevator lurched upward, the numbers ticking by, 2, 3, 4. I shifted my weight, clutching my purse, the silence heavy, broken only by the faint creak of the cables above. He started asking questions. "Do you live here? Where are you going?" His voice low and insistent. I answered vaguely, my heart racing, trying to stay calm. "Just heading home," I mumbled, keeping my eyes on the floor display. His questions didn't stop. "Alone? No roommate?" His tone was smooth but sharp, like a blade hidden in velvet. I felt his gaze heavy and unyielding even through those sunglasses, like he was peeling back my defenses. The air grew thicker, the elevator slower, as if time itself was stalling. I pressed myself against the wall, the cold metal grounding me, but my pulse hammered in my ears. He took a step closer, his coat brushing the edge of my space, and I caught a whiff of something, metallic like old coins or blood. "You shouldn't be out so late," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, each word a needle in my spine. The floor numbers crawled, 8, 9, and I prayed for the doors to open, for someone to step in. But we were alone, trapped in a box, suspended above the city, with nowhere to run. The elevator dinged, the doors sliding open on the 12th floor. My floor, a sliver of hope in the suffocating box. I lunged forward, my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, desperate to escape the man's heavy gaze. When the doors opened on my floor, I moved to leave, but he grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. "Stay a bit," he said, his tone chilling. I yanked free, screaming, my voice echoing in the hallway as I ran. His fingers were cold, unnaturally so, like they'd been dipped in ice, and his sunglasses slipped, revealing eyes that gleamed with something feral, something not quite human. I stumbled into the hallway, my scream bouncing off the walls, a raw, primal sound that tore through the silence. He lunged after me, his coat flapping like wings, his voice a low growl. "You can't leave," he hissed, his words chasing me as I sprinted toward my apartment. The hallway stretched endlessly, doors blurring past, each one locked, indifferent to my panic. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them, the clatter deafening in the quiet. He was close. I could hear his footsteps, deliberate, unhurried, like a predator savoring the hunt. I scooped up the keys, my breath ragged, and jammed them into the lock. The door clicked open just as his shadow loomed behind me, a dark silhouette against the fluorescent lights. I slammed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt, and collapsed. Against it, my heart pounding like a drum. His footsteps stopped outside, silent for a moment, then faded, leaving an eerie void. I slid to the floor, sobbing, the memory of his grip burning my wrist. The elevator dinged again, distant but ominous, and I knew he was gone, for now. But the fear clung to me, a weight I couldn't shake, a certainty that I'd barely escaped, something far worse than I could imagine. That night in the elevator left scars that never faded. I made it to my apartment, locking the door behind me, my hands shaking. I never saw him again, but the fear stayed. I avoid elevators now, taking the stairs even when I'm exhausted, terrified of being trapped again. Every creak in the building, every flicker of the hallway lights sent my heart racing, a reminder of that man's icy grip. I still wonder if he was just a creep, or if it was planned, if he'd been watching me. The building's cameras didn't catch his face clearly, and no one recognized him. It's like he vanished. I checked the footage with the building manager, grainy, distorted, his face a blur, as if the camera refused to see him. I stopped feeling safe in the city. The crowds, once comforting, now hid threats in every shadow. I noticed things after that. Strange figures lingering near the building, whispers in the stairwell when I climbed alone. Was he a random predator? Or something more? Something that chose me for reasons I'll never know? Tenants whispered about others who'd felt watched, followed, but no one had answers. The building felt alive, its corridors a maze where danger waited around every corner. I moved out months later, but the fear followed, a ghost that lived in my bones. That encounter taught me to trust my instincts, to run when the air feels wrong. The elevator isn't just a machine. It's a trap, a place where the world can shift, where strangers become threats. If you're ever in a city high-rise and a man steps into the elevator with eyes that don't belong, get out before the doors close. You might not get another chance. Have you ever felt trapped, face to face with someone who wasn't what they seemed? Share your story below because the truth is out there lurking in the city's pulse. And trust me, you don't want to meet it alone. The pulse of a festival can make you feel alive, like the world is vibrating to your heartbeat. That's how it felt at Outside Lands in San Francisco back in 2021. The music thumping, lights flashing, and the crowd roaring with energy. I was 22, a free spirit named Mia, soaking it all in with my best friend Ava. We were outsiders in this city, road trippers chasing adventure, and we were staying at an Airbnb in Oakland, a cozy spot in a neighborhood that seemed safe enough. The festival was a whirlwind, 2 days of dancing, laughter, and freedom. But by the second night, exhaustion crept in, and I craved a moment of quiet. After the second night of the festival, my friend and I went back to the Airbnb pretty late, around 1 in the morning. Ava crashed on the couch, her snores blending with the hum of the city outside. I couldn't sleep, my mind still buzzing from the music, so I decided to go out to my car to smoke and call my boyfriend. My car, parked on the street in this residential neighborhood, was my little sanctuary, a piece of home in this strange place. I slipped outside, the cool night air biting my skin, and settled into the driver's seat, lighting a cigarette. The street was quiet, the houses dark, and for a moment it was just me. The glow of my phone and my boyfriend's voice on the line. But that peace didn't last. I'd been sitting in my car for maybe 5 minutes when I saw a car pull up and park behind my car. Its headlights cut through the darkness, then dimmed, but the engine kept running. I froze, my cigarette dangling between my fingers. This was all street parking in a residential neighborhood, so at first I thought it would have been a neighbor or something. But no one got out. The car just sat there, a hulking shadow, its presence heavy, like a predator sizing up its prey. My boyfriend's voice faded to static in my ear as my instincts kicked in. Something was wrong, deeply, dangerously wrong. I scanned the mirrors, my heart starting to race, and realized I was alone, exposed in the dead of night, with a stranger who didn't belong. My heart slammed against my ribs, the cigarette forgotten as I gripped the steering wheel. The car behind me hadn't moved, its engine still purring. A low growl in the silence. Another few minutes passed before I realized that the car was still on, and nobody had ever gotten out of it to go into a house or whatever. My boyfriend was still on the phone, his voice a distant hum, but I couldn't focus. "Something's wrong," I whispered, my breath fogging the window. He urged me to get inside, to lock the door, and I nodded even though he couldn't see me. The entrance to the Airbnb couldn't be more than, say, 10 feet from where I was sitting in my parked car, so I steeled myself, reaching for the door handle. I went to open my driver's door to get out, my hand trembling, but as my foot touched the pavement, the car that was parked behind me started to pull forward, its headlights sweeping over me like a spotlight. But it didn't drive away. It stopped, half in the road, its engine idling. I immediately got super uneasy at that and was legitimately scared in a way that I quite haven't felt before. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't a coincidence. Whoever was in that car was watching me, waiting, and they weren't leaving. I slammed the door shut, got back into the car, locked my doors, and sped off pretty quickly, my tires screeching as I peeled out into the night. I drove aimlessly, my hands shaking, glancing at the rearview mirror every second. Was he following me? I couldn't tell, but the fear was a living thing clawing at my chest. I spent the next half hour driving around Oakland, making sure that nobody was following me. The city was a blur of neon signs and dark alleys, each shadow a potential threat. My boyfriend stayed on the line, his voice a lifeline, but I could barely hear him over the pounding in my ears. I took random turns, doubled back, Anything to shake a tail I wasn't even sure was there. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I was certain no one was behind me. I circled back to the Airbnb, my heart still racing, and saw that the car that had parked behind me earlier was now gone. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting, tainted by the knowledge that I'd come too close to something I didn't understand. I parked, my hands still trembling, and ran inside, locking the door behind me. Ava was still asleep, oblivious to the nightmare I'd just lived through. I sank to the floor, my phone clutched to my chest, and tried to piece together what had happened. That car, that deliberate movement. It wasn't random. Whoever was in there had a plan, and I'd been their target. The thought made my skin crawl, and I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to warn someone, to make sure this didn't happen again. I didn't sleep that night, my mind replaying every second of that encounter. The headlights, the idling engine, the way my gut screamed at me to run. I let the owner of the Airbnb know of this situation, my voice shaking as I recounted what happened. They promised to check the street security cameras, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Whoever was in that car was gone, a phantom who'd slipped through the cracks of the night. I learned my lesson about going out to my car alone at night in certain areas, and I swore I'd never be so careless again. But the fear didn't fade. It clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake, whispering that I hadn't seen the last of him. I also felt sad and uneasy because I knew that whoever was in the car couldn't have had great intentions. That certainty haunted me, gnawing at my sense of safety. I started digging, searching online for similar incidents in Oakland. What I found chilled me to the bone. Reports of women being followed at night, cars lingering in quiet neighborhoods, drivers who vanished when confronted. Some stories ended with police reports. Others hinted at worse, at women who didn't make it home. Was it the same person? A group? I couldn't know, but the pattern was undeniable, and it made me question every decision I'd made that night. Why had I gone out alone? Why hadn't I noticed sooner? A few days later, back home, I found The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker on my bookshelf, a gift from a friend I'd never opened. I read it cover to cover, the words hitting like a revelation. De Becker wrote about trusting your instincts, about how fear is a signal, not a weakness. This particular memory has come up a lot for me recently when reading this book, and it changed me. I started carrying pepper spray, checking my surroundings obsessively, and warning Ava and my friends to do the same. But the real change was deeper, a hyper-awareness, a constant scanning for threats even in the safest places. Then a month later, it happened again. I was at a gas station late at night filling up when I saw it, a car idling across the lot, its driver hidden behind tinted windows. My heart stopped. Was it him? I couldn't be sure, but the feeling was the same. That primal dread that had saved me before. I jumped back in my car and drove off, my hands shaking, and didn't stop until I was home, doors locked, lights on. I never saw the car again, but I didn't need to. The message was clear. The world was watching, and I'd never feel safe the same way again. The moral of the story here is trust your gut. That night in Oakland, my instincts saved me, and they might save you too. If you ever feel that chill, that whisper telling you something's wrong, listen. Don't wait for proof. Don't look back. Just run. Because some shadows don't just follow, they hunt. And they're patient. The fluorescent lights of Fred's buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the aisles of canned goods and baby supplies. I was 28, a new mom to my 1-year-old daughter, Sophie, juggling night shifts at this small-town grocery store to make ends meet. It was a normal day at Fred's, where I worked the evening shift, surrounded by the hum of freezers and the occasional chatter of customers. Sophie was my world, her gummy smile the only thing keeping me sane through the long hours. I'd strap her into a carrier sometimes, her tiny hands waving at passers-by, earning coos and grins from shoppers. Some people waved at her, some smiled, a few offered kind words, and Sophie loved the attention. But Fred's wasn't just a store, it was a hub for gossip, where locals swapped stories about everything from crop yields to old town legends. The store had security cameras installed to catch shoplifters, their grainy feeds monitored from a cramped office in the back. I'd never paid them much mind, just another part of the job. That night, though, as I restocked diapers in aisle 6, a strange unease settled over me. The store felt too quiet, the air too heavy, like the calm before a storm. Sophie, usually a chatterbox, was oddly still in her carrier, her eyes fixed on something down the aisle. I followed her gaze, but there was nothing. Just rows of formula and baby wipes bathed in cold light. As the night wore on, the store's usual rhythm faltered. The last customers trickled out, leaving just me, Sophie, and the hum of the freezers. I was rearranging formula cans when I felt it. A prickle on my neck like someone was watching. That's when I saw him. A man standing at the end of the aisle, staring at us with unblinking eyes. He was tall, gaunt, his face half hidden under a worn baseball cap, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. His presence felt wrong, like he didn't belong, and Sophie's sudden fussing only made my unease grow. I forced a smile, assuming he was just another late-night shopper. "Can I help you?" I called, my voice echoing in the empty store. He didn't answer, just tilted his head, his gaze sliding from me to Sophie. My stomach twisted. I scooped Sophie closer, her tiny body tense against mine, and busied myself with the shelves, hoping he'd leave. But when I glanced back, he was closer, too close, standing just beyond the formula display, his shadow stretching across the floor. The air grew colder, the lights flickering faintly, and Sophie let out a sharp cry, her eyes locked on him. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted, trapped by the weight of his stare and the growing certainty that he wasn't here for groceries. I grabbed Sophie and hurried to the back office, my heart pounding. I needed to see the security feed, to prove I wasn't losing it. The man was gone when I looked back, the aisle empty, but the unease clung to me like damp cloth. In the office, I strapped Sophie into her car seat, her whimpers echoing my own fear, and pulled up the camera footage. That's when I saw it. A heavy can of formula, the kind you need 2 hands to lift, wobbling on the shelf before it crashed to the floor. The timestamp matched the moment I'd felt that chill, but the footage showed no one. No man, no customer, just the can moving on its own, as if shoved by an invisible hand. My breath caught. The camera had caught it clear as day, a 20-pound can defying gravity with no one in sight. I rewound, zoomed in, my hands trembling. There, in the corner of the frame, a flicker. A shadow, humanoid but distorted, its edges blurring like smoke. It was there for a split second, then gone. I knew it wasn't a glitch. Something had been in that aisle with us. My mind raced. Had the man been real or something else entirely? The lights flickered again, and Sophie's cry turned into a scream. I scooped her up, bolting for the front door, the footage looping in my head. A warning that we weren't alone in Fred's that night. I didn't sleep that night. Sophie curled against me as I stared at the ceiling. The footage burned into my mind. The next day, I told my coworker Noah about the incident, but he laughed it off, saying it was probably a loose shelf or a prank. His skepticism stung, but I couldn't shake what I'd seen. That moment haunted me, the certainty that something was in Fred's with us, something that wasn't human. I started digging into the store's history, uncovering whispers of strange events. A fire in the 80s, a worker who vanished, old Polaroids found in the walls during a renovation, showing faces no one recognized. The questions gnawed at me. What was it? Why Sophie? Why me? I quit Fred's a month later, unable to face those aisles again, but the memory followed me. Locals spoke of watchers, entities tied to the land, drawn to the living. I found a forum post about Fred's, claiming the cameras caught shadows, years before. Nothing concrete, just enough to keep me up at night. I still don't know what was in that store, but I feel it sometimes. A cold gaze in the dark. Did it want Sophie? Was it bound to Fred's, or did it latch onto us? I check my home's cameras now, dreading the day I see that shadow again, waiting. The basement smelled of mildew and secrets, its shadows clinging to the walls like cobwebs. I'm Lucas, 17, a high school junior who moved into this old house in Salem, Oregon, with my parents and little brother Noah 6 months ago. The house was a steal, its sagging porch and peeling paint a project my parents couldn't resist. But the neighbors hushed stories about its past, tenants who vanished, lights flickering at midnight, whispers in the attic, made my skin crawl. They'd glance at our windows, their faces tight, as if warning us without words. I found the wooden box while rummaging for my dad's tools, its surface carved with strange symbols, like runes from a forgotten language. Inside were brittle letters, a cracked pocket watch frozen at 3:13, and a photo of a man with hollow eyes, his stare piercing through time. One letter written in shaky handwriting chilled me. The listener is here. It hears your name, don't let it in. I hid the box under my bed, not telling Mom or Dad, who were consumed with renovations, new paint, new pipes, trying to erase the house's age. Noah, 7, was oblivious, lost in his superhero games, his laughter the only bright spot in the house. But after I opened that box, everything changed. The air felt heavy, the silence too deep, as if something was holding its breath. Shadows, stretched longer, curling around corners like fingers. The floorboards groaned when no one walked, and a faint hum lingered in the air, like a radio tuned to nothing. I read another letter, its words searing into me. It knows you now. It waits. I told myself it was just an old house with old stories, but those words kept me awake, whispering in the dark, my name tangled in their echo. It was well past midnight, the house wrapped in a silence so thick it felt alive. Noah was asleep down the hall, his superhero nightlight casting a faint blue glow that barely reached the stairs. My parents were in their room, their soft snores drifting through the walls, a rare moment of peace in their endless to-do list. I was in the living room, sprawled on the couch, headphones on, scrolling through my phone, when I heard strange noises from upstairs, footsteps, slow and heavy, like someone pacing. They weren't the usual creaks of an old house settling. These had weight, intent, a rhythm that made my stomach twist, each step deliberate as if taunting me. Everyone in the house was asleep, so what was moving up there? My heart skipped a beat, my fingers freezing on the screen. I yanked off my headphones, the silence now deafening, pressing against my ears. The noises continued, a heavy thud, then a faint scratching, like claws dragging across wood, slow and deliberate. My skin prickled, the air turning cold, my breath catching in my throat. I glanced at the staircase, its shadows curling like smoke, the darkness thicker than it should. A low hum joined the sounds, almost a whisper, my name woven into it. Lucas. It was faint but clear, like a voice calling from the other side of a wall. I wanted to chalk it up to pipes or the wind, but the windows were locked tight. The night, outside, still as death. The hum grew louder, vibrating in my chest, and I felt it. Something awake, something that knew I was listening, waiting for me to respond. My hands shook as I grabbed a flashlight from the coffee table, its beam weak against the dark, trembling in my grip. I climbed the stairs, each step creaking louder than my heartbeat, the air growing colder with every I checked the house, finding my parents' door closed, Noah asleep under his blankets, his nightlight steady, casting blue shadows across his superhero posters. The footsteps had stopped, but the air buzzed like static before a lightning strike, heavy with anticipation. I went upstairs, searching for the source of the noise, my flashlight shaking, its light stuttering across the hallways, peeling wallpaper. The floorboards groaned under my weight, as if warning me to turn back. I found no one, but the guest room window was wide open, its curtains flapping wildly in the night breeze, the frame rattling against the sill. I swore it had been locked. Dad checked every window nightly, his routine bordering on obsession. I stepped closer, the hum returning, louder now, a voice murmuring words I couldn't catch, like a chant from another world. The flashlight flickered, its beam revealing nothing but dust and cracked paint, then died completely. I spun around, heart pounding, and saw it. A shadow, tall and faceless, sliding across the hallway wall. It was gone before I could focus, but the cold deepened, my breath clouding the air, curling like smoke in the dim light. The window rattled, as if something had just slipped through, leaving a faint scratch on the sill, deep and jagged. I shouted, for my parents, my voice cracking, but only silence answered, the hum fading into nothingness. I slammed the window shut, my fingers numb, and backed away, my pulse screaming that I wasn't alone in that room, that something had been there, watching, waiting for me to see it. I stumbled downstairs, pounding on my parents' door, my voice hoarse with panic. My parents stumbled out, bleary-eyed, checking the house but finding nothing. Dad ran a hand through his hair, his voice gruff. "It's the wind, Lucas. Old houses make noises. They said it was probably animals or the breeze." Mom nodding as she double-checked the locks, her hands trembling despite her calm words. But their eyes betrayed doubt, a flicker of unease they couldn't hide. I was left shaken, certain something was in the house, though there was no proof. The shadow, the hum, the scratch, they weren't natural, not the wind or squirrels. I'm still uneasy, convinced something unnatural lingers, its presence a weight I can't shake, a hum in the dark that knows my name. I went back to the basement. That night, pulling the box from under my bed, my hands trembling as I read the letters again. They told of a recluse who'd lived here in the 1950s, a man obsessed with contacting the listener, a thing that heard every whisper, every fear. He'd performed rituals in the attic, drawing symbols like those on the box, trying to summon he'd vanished, his room sealed, but the letters warned, "It stays, it knows you." I found more in Salem's archives, stories of missing tenants all tied to this house. Noises at night, open windows, then silence, as if the house swallowed them. A 1960s article mentioned a sketch found in the attic, labeled "The Listener," depicting a faceless figure, its head tilted, listening. The man in my photo matched it, his hollow eyes unblinking, eternal. I started noticing signs, scratches on the attic door, a cold spot in the hallway that made Noah cry, the pocket watch ticking on my desk though I'd left it locked away. The noises never returned, but the house hasn't felt right since. I sealed the box in a lockbox, burying it in the backyard under moonlight, praying it would stay gone. Noah avoids the upstairs now, clinging to me when the lights flicker. Even Dad checks the windows twice, his face tight. I'm still convinced something lingers, its hum a reminder of that night, when silence feels alive, when your name echoes. In the dark, trust your fear. Some houses listen, and they never forget who you are. The dense forests of rural Tennessee were my sanctuary, a tangle of oak and pine where I'd roamed since I was a kid. At 32, I was a seasoned hunter named Caleb. My mornings often spent tracking deer through the misty hollows. One crisp autumn dawn, while scouting a new trail, I stumbled across something odd, a small wooden charm, half buried in the moss, carved with jagged symbols that seemed to writhe under my touch. It felt heavy, wrong, like it didn't belong in the forest. I pocketed it, my curiosity outweighing the unease creeping up my spine. As I trekked deeper, the forest grew unnaturally quiet, the usual chatter of birds and squirrels gone. I felt it then, a prickle on my neck like something was watching me from afar, its gaze heavy and unblinking. I scanned the trees, my rifle slung over my shoulder, but saw only shadows dancing in the fog. The charm burned in my pocket, its weight tugging at my thoughts. I told myself it was just nerves, but the air thickened, carrying a faint hum like a heartbeat pulsing through the earth. I set up in a clearing, hoping to shake the feeling, but the forest seemed to close in, its branches curling like fingers. My dog Jasper whined, his ears flat, staring at a patch of underbrush where nothing moved. The charm felt hotter now, almost alive. Something was out there, and it knew I had taken what was hers. I gripped my rifle, my breath shallow, realizing this hunt was no longer mine to control. The clearing felt like a trap, the fog coiling tighter around me. I crouched low, my rifle ready, but the forest was a wall of silence broken only by Jasper's soft growls. Then I heard it, a heavy, ragged breath, so close it seemed to brush my ear, though nothing stood beside me. The sound was wet, guttural, like a beast savoring its prey, yet the underbrush lay still, untouched. My skin crawled, the charm in my pocket pulsing like a second heart. I swung my flashlight, its beam slicing through the mist, but it revealed only twisted branches and empty air. Jasper froze, his hackles raised, staring into the fog where a faint glow flickered. 2 pinpricks of light, like eyes, gone in a blink. The breathing grew louder, now circling me, a predator's rhythm. Impossibly near yet invisible. I backed toward a tree, my rifle trembling in my hands. The forest seeming to warp, its shadows stretching into claws. The charm burned hotter, and I yanked it out, its symbols glowing faintly, casting jagged patterns on the ground. A low hum rose, vibrating through my bones, and the trees swayed, though no wind stirred. I whispered a prayer, my voice shaking, but the breathing turned into a growl, deep and primal, shaking the earth. As I turned to flee, a sharp crack echoed behind me. Sea branches snapping like something massive was charging through the forest. I ran, Jasper at my heels, the fog swallowing my path. The breathing followed, now a hiss, now a roar, always inches away. I stumbled, my flashlight falling, its light spinning wildly, catching a glimpse of a gaunt claw-like hand reaching from the mist, then vanishing. My legs burned as I tore through the forest, branches clawing at my face, Jasper's barks, echoing in the fog. The breathing chased me, a relentless shadow, its rhythm weaving through the trees. I tripped over roots, the charm slipping from my hand, its glow fading into the moss. The forest roared, a sound like 1,000 voices howling in fury, and I felt it, eyes boring into my back, ancient and unyielding. I scrambled up, abandoning the charm, and sprinted toward the faint light of my cabin, the edge of the woods finally in sight. I burst through the door, slamming it shut, my chest heaving. Jasper whimpered, pressing against me, his eyes fixed on the window. The breathing stopped, but the silence was worse. heavy with a presence that lingered just beyond the glass. I never went hunting alone after that, haunted by the sense that something was still out there, waiting in the forest. My dreams were plagued by those glowing eyes, that claw-like hand, the charm symbols burning behind my lids. Days later, I forced myself to return, searching for the charm, hoping to end the nightmare. The clearing was empty, the moss undisturbed, but I found something else. A circle of ancient stones hidden under vines, each carved with the same symbols as the charm. In the center lay a weathered journal, its pages brittle, written by a trapper from the 1800s. He spoke of a keeper, of the woods, a spirit bound to the forest, awakened by those who took its relics. The final entry read, "I gave it back, but it still sees me." My blood ran cold. Had I angered it by taking the charm? I buried the journal in the stones, whispering an apology to the forest, but the weight never lifted. Something is still out there, and I feel its gaze every time I pass the trees. Sometimes at dawn, I hear a faint breath outside my cabin, and Jasper growls, staring at the woods. Last week I found a single symbol carved into my porch, glowing faintly in the dark. Is it still hunting me, or am I marked forever? I don't know, but I'll never step into that forest alone again. I moved into my house when I was 8 years old, and it seemed like a normal house, but I don't know. I just felt like I'd been there before I knew where and what everything was, and everything was just super familiar, even though I've never set foot in that house. My name's Emma, and at 8 I was a curious kid with a knack for noticing things others missed. Our new home sat in a quiet suburban neighborhood, all manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses, the kind of place where kids rode bikes until dusk and neighbors waved from porches. But our house, number 47 Willow Lane, felt different, like it was watching us from the moment we unpacked. The house was old, its white paint peeling, its windows dark even in sunlight. My parents saw a fixer-upper. I saw a puzzle. The first, I explored every corner. Creaky stairs, dusty attic, a basement that smelled of earth and secrets. Neighbors whispered about the previous owners, a family that left suddenly years ago, their belongings still in the garage, as if they'd fled in the night. "Bad luck," one old man muttered, his eyes darting to our house. I laughed it off, but the story stuck, a seed of unease planted deep. That night, lying in my new room, the house groaned like it was alive, its walls sighing with every gust of wind. My dog, Rusty, whined at the door, his ears flat, staring at nothing. I told myself it was just an old house settling, but the air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. My older sister, Sarah, complained about her room, saying it felt wrong, like someone was always there. Mom brushed it off as moving jitters, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that the house had a memory, one it wasn't ready to share. The first few weeks in the house were quiet but not peaceful. I'd wake up with a start, my heart racing, convinced I'd heard someone whisper my name. Few months later, I also had dreams of me wandering the house. These dreams probably don't mean anything, but every couple of nights I would get a dream of me wandering the house, and they just felt like they took hours. In these dreams I never felt alone to, and whenever I turned my head, I would see something peeking at me from like around the corner or around a door frame or something. In those dreams, the house was different. Darker, the hallways longer, the air thick with a cold that seeped into my bones. I'd turn to catch a glimpse of a shadow, a flicker of movement, but it was always gone, leaving only the echo of my own footsteps. By day, the house played tricks. I'd find my toys rearranged, books open to pages I hadn't touched, Rusty grew restless, his hackles raised as he stared at empty corners, a low growl rumbling in his throat. My dogs would bark at the corners in the house, and my older sister claimed to feel something living in her room. The stuff that I was seeing never really happened to her, but she could also feel something in her room at times. Sarah stopped sleeping in her room, camping out on the couch, her eyes hollow from nightmares she wouldn't share. "It's like someone's watching me," she whispered once, her voice trembling. I felt it too, a presence that lingered when I was alone, its gaze heavy, like fingers brushing the back of my neck. The house seemed to know when I was vulnerable. Late at night, when my parents were asleep, the silence would break, a creak from the attic, a sigh from the walls. I'd lie frozen, clutching my blanket, Rusty pressed against me, his eyes fixed on the darkness. The air would shift, growing colder, heavier, as if something was drawing closer, waiting for me to look. I told myself it was my imagination, fueled by too many ghost stories, but the house had other plans and its secrets were just beginning to unravel. The house's games grew bolder. I always thought that I heard whispering whenever I was alone in the house. I've always been paranoid, so I thought that it was just in my head. But then I saw shadows when no one was around. Objects like balls would roll on their own. I thought that it was just the wind moving them. But the dogs would come up and bark at something next to the ball. Other objects would be in a different place too, like a stuffed animal or a TV remote. I also heard running and footsteps, sometimes always running, to my location in the house, which was weird. The whispers came at night, soft and unintelligible, like a crowd murmuring just beyond the walls. I'd catch shadows flitting across doorways, too quick to follow, too real to dismiss. My soccer ball would roll across the living room, stopping at Rusty's feet, his barks frantic, aimed at empty air. The TV remote appeared on the kitchen counter, far from where I'd left it, as if placed by invisible hands. The basement was the worst. Sometimes I'll exit through that door to pick up dog poop or something different. Most of the time, though, I'll lock the door back up, but perhaps maybe a dozen times I've forgotten when I do forget to lock the door and I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I'll always see this sort of tapping noise, though. The tapping only happens when the door is unlocked, mind you. I'd forget to lock the back door, and at night, a rhythmic tapping would start, sharp and deliberate, like someone or something testing the handle. I'd creep downstairs, heart pounding, and lock it, the tapping stopping instantly, leaving a silence that felt alive, watching. One night I saw it. A shadow at the basement window, tall and formless, its edges blurring into the dark. "Rusty," snarled, his fur bristling. But when I flicked on the light, it was gone, leaving only a chill that lingered in the air. I stopped sleeping, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for the next sound, the next shadow. The house wasn't just haunted, it was hungry, feeding on my fear, drawing me deeper into its secrets with every whisper, every tap. The house never let me go. Years passed, but the whispers, the shadows, the tapping, they carved a permanent mark on my soul. I'd lie awake, Rusty by my side, his growls a reminder that we weren't alone. Sarah moved out as soon as she could, refusing to talk about her room, her silence louder than any confession. My parents never saw it, never heard, but I did every time I was alone, the house waking to play its cruel games. My dogs would bark at the corners in the house, and my older sister claimed to feel something living in her room. The stuff that I was seeing never really happened to her, but she could also feel something in her room at times. The phenomena stopped when I left for college, but the fear stayed, a shadow that followed me to every new home. I dug into the house's history, desperate for answers. Old records hinted at tragedy. A family that vanished, whispers of a death no one could prove. Neighbors spoke of lights flickering in the empty house, of voices echoing from within. Was it their spirits, trapped in the walls? Or something older? Something the house had always harbored, feeding on those who dared to live there. The tapping at the basement door. Was it a warning or an invitation? I'll never know. But I know what I felt, what Rusty saw, what Sarah feared. The house wasn't just a building, it was alive. Its pulse a rhythm of whispers and shadows drawing us into its endless nightmare. That house taught me that some places hold on to their secrets, that the walls can watch, listen, and wait. If you ever move into a home that feels too familiar, where the air hums with unseen eyes, trust your instincts. Check the locks, watch the corners, and listen for the whispers. They might be calling your name. Have you ever lived somewhere that wasn't yours, where the shadows moved and the silence spoke? Share your story below because the truth is out there, hiding in the walls. And trust me, you don't want to face it alone. There's something sacred about a quiet afternoon at home, when the world feels like it's yours alone, safe and untouched. That's how it was that day, sunlight streaming through my kitchen window, the smell of coffee lingering in the air. I'm Lauren, 27, living in a small rental house on the edge of a sleepy suburban neighborhood. It was a Tuesday, nothing special, just me folding laundry and humming to the radio, lost in the rhythm of routine. My phone buzzed with a text from my boyfriend, Jake, saying he'd be home late. No big deal, I was used to holding down the fort. But then, a sound shattered the calm. A sharp, deliberate knock at the front door. I was home alone when a knock came at the door. My heart skipped a beat. We didn't get visitors here, not unannounced. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers stuck out like a sore thumb. I set down the laundry, my pulse quickening, and tiptoed to the door, peering through the peephole. A man stood there, mid-40s, wiry with a faded denim jacket, his eyes scanning the porch like he was expecting someone else. He asked if Abby was there, his voice low and gravelly, the name hanging in the air like a question he already knew the answer to. Abby? I frowned, shaking my head. I told him I didn't know any Abby. The name meant nothing to me. No neighbor, no friend, no one. His face tightened, a flicker of something, disappointment, suspicion, crossing his eyes. He seemed off, his demeanor strange, like he was playing a role and forgetting his lines. I gripped the doorframe, my instincts prickling. "You sure?" he pressed, leaning closer, his breath fogging the glass. I nodded, firm, and closed the door quickly, my heart thudding as I slid the deadbolt into place. I stood there listening, expecting him to knock again or walk away. But the silence was worse, heavy and unnatural. I crept to the window, peering through the blinds, and saw him still on the porch, staring at the door like he could see through it. My stomach twisted. Who was he? Why Abby? I tried to shake it. Off, telling myself he was just confused, maybe lost. But then another sound, a faint, deliberate tap, this time from the back of the house. My blood ran cold. I heard a knock at the back door, slow and insistent, each rap like a countdown. I froze, my breath shallow, as the truth hit me. He hadn't left. He was circling my house, looking for a way in. My hands shook as I backed away. From the window, the knock at the back door echoing in my ears like a warning. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to dial Jake, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "Someone's here," I whispered when he answered, my voice barely audible. "He's at the back door." Jake's tone shifted instantly, urgent. Lock? Everything, Lauren. I'm on my way. I nodded even though he couldn't see me and rushed to double-check the locks, my eyes darting to every window, every shadow. I crept to the kitchen where the back door stood, its glass panel revealing the man's silhouette. It was the same man asking for Abby again, his voice muffled but insistent, his fist rapping against the wood. "Abby, I know you're in there," he called, and my heart stopped. I didn't respond, too scared to make a sound, my body pressed against the wall, praying he'd give up. His shadow loomed unmoving like he was listening for me. Then a new sound, a faint scratching like nails on wood, as if he was testing the door's strength. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't a mistake. He wasn't lost. He was hunting. Clutched my phone, my thumb hovering over 911, but something held me back. What if he heard me? What if it made him desperate? I glanced at the knife block on the counter, my mind racing. I locked all the doors and called my boyfriend, my voice trembling as I told him everything. The name Abby, the man's strange demeanor, the way he'd circled the house. Jake promised he was speeding home, but he was 20 minutes away and every second felt like an eternity. Then silence. The knocking stopped, the scratching ceased, and the shadow vanished. I held my breath, straining to hear footsteps, a car engine, anything. Nothing. Had he left? I edged toward the back door, my heart pounding, and peeked through the glass. He was gone, the backyard empty, the grass undisturbed. But relief didn't come. Instead, a deeper fear settled in. Where had he gone? Was he still out there, watching? I ran to the front window, scanning the street, but it was deserted, the afternoon sun mocking my panic. I sank to the floor, my phone still in hand, and tried to make sense of it. Who was Abby? Why was he so sure she was here? I opened my laptop, hands still shaking, and searched for the name Abby in connection to my address. Nothing came up. No news articles, no records, no trace of anyone named Abby ever living here. The house was a rental, barely a year old to me, and the landlord had never mentioned previous tenants. But the man's certainty, his desperation gnawed at me. Had something happened here, something buried? I texted Jake again, urging him to hurry, and started searching deeper. Local forums, crime reports, anything that might explain this stranger's obsession. Then, a new thought hit me, chilling me to the core. What if Abby wasn't a person? What if it was a code, a signal, part of some larger scheme? The scratching, the circling, it felt too deliberate, too practiced. I remembered a story I'd read about home invaders using fake names to test if houses were empty. Was that his game? Or was it something worse? Something tied to this house, to me? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last, and I knew I wouldn't feel safe until I had answers. Jake burst through the door an hour later, his face pale as I spilled out the story. He checked every inch of the house, the yard, the street, but found nothing. No footprints, no tire marks, no sign of the man. I was shaken and couldn't stop thinking about what he wanted. The name Abby echoed in my mind, a riddle with no solution. We stayed up all night, blinds drawn, every light on, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Became hypervigilant about strangers after that, jumping at every unexpected sound, double-checking locks like my life depended on it. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a trap, its walls hiding secrets I couldn't uncover. I called the landlord the next day, demanding answers. Had anyone named Abby lived here? Any history I should know? He brushed me off, saying the house was new, no tenants before me. But his voice was too quick, too dismissive, and I didn't buy it. I dug deeper, scouring online records, even knocking on neighbors' doors. One older woman, Mrs. Carter, hesitated before speaking. She didn't know an Abby, but she'd heard rumors about the land before the house was built. A missing person case, decades old, tied to a woman who'd vanished without a trace. The details were vague, but the story chilled me. Was the man connected to that? Was Abby her name or something else entirely? The police were no help. Without evidence, a name, a license plate, they filed a report and sent me home. But I couldn't let it go. I installed cameras, motion sensors, anything to feel in control. Then 2 weeks later it happened again. I was in bed, the house dark, when a single, deliberate knock came from the back door. My heart stopped. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the camera feed, and there he was. The same man, his face half lit by moonlight, clutching a small, worn notebook. He didn't knock again, just stood there staring at the door, then whispered something I couldn't hear. The feed cut out, and when I checked again, he was gone. I haven't slept right since. I moved out a month later to a new city, a new life, but the fear follows me. That notebook, his whisper, the name Abby, they're burned into my mind, pieces of a puzzle I'm terrified to solve. I still don't know who he was or what he wanted with Abby, but I know he wasn't random. He was looking for something, or someone, and he thought I had it. I've since read about home invasions, about strangers testing houses with fake names, but this felt different, personal, like the house itself was part of his mission. I'm more cautious now, always checking my surroundings. I carry a stun gun, avoid opening the door to strangers, and warn everyone I know to do the same. But the questions linger, heavy and unanswered. Was Abby real? Was she a ghost, a victim, or a lie? And why did he come back? If you're listening, wondering if you should ignore that gut feeling, don't. That knock, that name, that man, they taught me that safety is an illusion. And some strangers don't just pass through. They linger, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. Trust your instincts. Lock your doors. Because some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to keep you alive. The night was crisp. The kind of autumn evening in rural England where the stars felt close enough to touch. I was 16, a restless teenager named Mia, holed up in our family's conservatory, a glass-walled room that jutted out like a lantern into the sprawling garden behind our cottage. I was set in my conservatory, on the phone with a friend, while the conservatory looked out onto my decking, followed by my garden. The garden was my parents' pride, a wild tangle of roses, ivy, and ancient oaks, stretching far enough to hide secrets in its shadows. My mom was out in the garden, hanging the washing out, and my dad was gardening slightly further up. I'd always loved the conservatory at night, its windows framing the world like a painting. But that evening something felt off. The air was too still, the silence too thick, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves beyond the deck. I was half listening to my friend Lucas ramble about school, my eyes drifting to the garden, when a chill crept up my spine. The deck's wooden table and benches gleamed under the moonlight, but the shadows beneath seemed to shift, as if something was watching me through the glass. I laughed it off, blaming an overactive imagination, but the unease lingered, a whisper in the dark that I wasn't alone. I hung up with Lucas, his voice still echoing in my head, but the conservatory felt colder now, the glass walls amplifying every sound from the garden. I got off the phone with my friend and felt a creeping unease, my eyes drawn to the garden where something seemed to move. The deck was empty, the washing swaying gently on the line, but beyond it, in the deeper shadows of the oaks, a flicker caught my eye, a shape, too quick to pin down, darting between the trees. My heart skipped. Was it a fox? A stray cat? But the movement was wrong, too deliberate, too human-like yet not. I pressed my face closer to the glass, my breath fogging the pain. The garden was a maze of moonlight and shadow, but there it was again, a silhouette, low and hunched, skittering along the hedge. My pulse quickened. I wanted to call out to Mom or Dad, but they were too far, their figures small against the vastness of the garden. The conservatory, once a cozy retreat, now felt like a fishbowl, exposing me to whatever was out there. I grabbed my phone, ready to text Lucas, but the screen flickered, the battery draining from 80% to 10% in seconds. A low hum filled the air, not from the house but from the garden, like a voice just out of reach, and I knew something was watching me. My heart pounded as I stared into the garden, the hum growing louder, more insistent. Then it happened. From behind the back bench on the deck, an extremely pale, disembodied hand shot up, fingers spread wide like some grotesque jazz hands. It was bone white, almost glowing under the moonlight, its nails jagged and black. It waved frantically, then pointed, its wrist twisting unnaturally fast, left, right, back to a wave, before vanishing as if I'd blinked it away. I froze. My scream caught in my throat. The whole ordeal lasted maybe 10 seconds, and I sat in complete shock, wondering what the heck I'd just seen. I stumbled out to the garden, my legs shaking, and found Mom still pinning clothes to the line. I told her what I'd seen, my mouth wide open, but she just thought I was making things up. "Mia, you've been reading too many horror books," she said, her voice gentle but dismissive. Dad, further out, didn't even look up from his roses. I scanned the deck, the bench, the shadows, nothing. But the air felt charged, like static before a storm, and I knew what I'd seen wasn't my imagination. That hand wasn't human, and it had wanted my attention. My chest tightened as I realized it might still be out there, hidden in the garden's depths, waiting for me to look again. I didn't sleep that night. The image of that pale hand seared into my mind, its twisted gestures replaying like a broken film. I kept mentioning it to Mom, but the more I spoke, the less she believed me, though she started to waver when I described it in detail. Dad never budged, calling it teenage nonsense. I questioned if it was my imagination, but deep down, I knew I'd seen that disembodied hand as clear as day. Now 24, I've moved to London, far from that cottage, but the memory clings to me like damp fog. I think about it regularly, wondering if anyone else has seen something like it. I dug into local history, finding tales of garden wraiths, spectral entities tied to old English estates, said to linger where blood was spilled centuries ago. Our cottage was built on land once owned by a reclusive lord, rumored to have vanished under strange circumstances. Nothing solid, just whispers, but enough to make my skin crawl. I still don't know what I saw, but it wasn't a trick of the mind. Was it a ghost? Something older, hungrier? Why did it reach for me? Some nights I dream of that hand, its fingers curling toward me, and I wake gasping, checking the shadows. I haven't been back to the garden, but I wonder, did it stay there, or is it still watching, waiting for me to return? Her eyes were what I remembered most. Cold, unblinking, like they saw something in me I didn't know was there. I'm Ava, 10 years old, a shy kid who loved summer days at the YMCA in Burlington, Vermont, where my cousin Chloe and I would spend hours escaping the heat. The lifeguard, Ms. Harper, was always there, perched on her stand like a hawk, her whistle glinting in the sun. She'd watch us, not with the usual boredom of an adult, but with a focus that made my stomach twist. Once, when I slipped on the pool deck, she helped me up, her grip too tight, her smile too sharp. "Careful, Ava," she'd said, my name, lingering on her tongue like a secret she wasn't ready to share. I told myself it was nothing, just a kid's overactive imagination, but that look stayed with me. A splinter I couldn't pull out, a warning I didn't yet understand. That spring break, Chloe and I were dropped off at the YMCA, our grandmother promising to pick us up in a few hours. The place was a concrete maze, its air thick with chlorine and sweat, the hum of fluorescent lights a constant drone. It was nearly empty, just a few adults grunting in the gym, their footsteps echoing down the halls. Chloe, a year younger and fearless, dragged me from one activity to another, her energy infectious. We played basketball, our sneakers squeaking on the polished court, then swam laps in the pool, the water a chilly shock against our skin. The day dragged, the pool's cold seeping into our bones, our laughter fading as the hours stretched. I kept catching Ms. Harper's eyes from her lifeguard stand, her gaze heavy, like she was waiting for something. I pushed it down, telling myself I was being silly, but the air felt different, charged with an unease I couldn't name. Chloe and I spent the morning bouncing between the basketball court and the pool, our laughter echoing in the nearly empty YMCA. The water was freezing, our fingers pruned, but we didn't care. We played tag, swam laps, and invented silly games to pass the time, the clock on the wall ticking slower than it should. Eventually, we started a breath-holding contest in the shallow end, timing ourselves by the wall clock. I was winning, my lungs burning as I stayed under, the world muffled by the water's weight. Ms. Harper, the lifeguard, tapped my shoulder, telling us to stop or leave the pool. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't place, anger or worse. "You're done here," she said, her whistle dangling like a threat, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As we climbed out, shivering, our swimsuits dripping on the tiles, she offered to let us into the sauna to warm up, despite the 18 and over sign. "Special treat," she said, her voice softer now, but her smile was tight, forced like a mask slipping. Chloe's eyes lit up, the idea of sneaking into the grown-up sauna thrilling her. But my stomach twisted, that splinter of unease digging deeper. Ms. Harper's look was back, colder now, like she'd been waiting for this moment all day. I wanted to say no, to pull Chloe back to the locker room, but her excitement was contagious, and I didn't want to seem scared. We followed her down a dim hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering, our wet footprints trailing behind us like a map to a place we shouldn't go. I didn't know it then, but we were walking straight into a trap, one set by someone who'd been watching us far too closely. Ms. Harper led us to the sauna, unlocking the glass door and adjusting the thermostat. The wooden interior was warm, the air thick with the scent of cedar, the benches smooth under our damp towels. She shut the door and I thought I saw her lock it, her shadow lingering outside, a dark silhouette against the glass. The heat climbed fast, too fast, the room turning into an oven, the air heavy, pressing against our skin. We tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The handle stuck as if welded shut. Panic set in as the heat seared our lungs, our skin stinging, the walls closing in. We banged on the door, screaming for help, but Ms. Harper just stared ahead from her lifeguard stand, her face blank, unmoving, her eyes locked on the pool as if she couldn't hear us, or didn't want to. The heat was unbearable, a living thing that clawed at us, our towels bone dry, our voices hoarse from shouting. Chloe slumped against me, her breath shallow, her face flushed red. My eyes burned, my skin raw, the air so thick it felt like drowning. We wrapped our towels over our heads, the damp fabric our only shield. but it wasn't enough. The clock above the door ticked on, each second an eternity, the heat climbing to levels that could kill. After what felt like forever, 45 minutes by the clock, a man approached, unlocking the door as we shoved past, gasping for the cool air outside. Our legs trembling, our bodies slick with sweat. He looked confused, muttering, "They want out," as Ms. Harper sighed, stepping aside, her eyes locked on me, cold and knowing, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. We collapsed in the changing room, shaking, the sauna's heat still clinging to us like a second skin. I knew then, she'd meant to trap us, maybe worse. Her blank stare a lie, hiding something twisted. We barely spoke as we dressed, our hands trembling. The sauna's heat a ghost on our skin, our swimsuits heavy with the memory of that room. I was convinced Ms. Harper had tried to trap us, maybe kill us, but the why gnawed at me. A question with no answer. We stumbled to the parking lot where our grandmother was waiting, her face creasing with worry as we told her what happened. At home, I poured out the story to my parents, my voice shaking, but they thought I was exaggerating. The sauna's lock just a malfunction, a glitch in an old building. The memory haunts me. Small spaces or heat trigger panic attacks. My heart racing like I'm back in that oven. The walls closing in. Ms. Harper's eyes watching from the dark. I couldn't let it go. I dug into the YMCA's history, finding whispers in local forums, kids trapped in locked rooms, equipment failures that weren't accidents, Ms. Harper's name always nearby, never blamed. A retired janitor, met over coffee at a diner, told me she'd lost a sister years ago, a drowning at that same pool, and blamed kids like us for her pain. Was it revenge, a need to punish, or something darker? A fracture in her mind that turned her into a predator. I never returned to the YMCA. Its concrete walls a nightmare I couldn't revisit. I see her eyes in my dreams, watching, waiting, her whistle a taunt. I'm sure she meant to harm us, her blank stare a mask for something broken, something that wanted us to suffer. I checked the news years later, finding a small article. Ms. Harper had been fired, linked to incidents with minors, but no charges stuck. She vanished from Burlington, her whereabouts unknown. But I wonder if she's out there, watching other kids, waiting for her next chance. That day taught me to trust my fear, to listen when someone's eyes don't match their smile. Some traps are built to break you, and not everyone escapes. If you feel that prickle on your neck, that whisper of wrongness, run, because some dangers wear human faces, and they're closer than you think. The summer I turned 10, a strange envelope appeared in our mailbox addressed to me, Emily, in spidery ink. Inside was a golden ticket to the Willow Creek Community Center, a sprawling complex with pools and saunas, offering a free day pass for kids. No sender, no explanation, just my name. My cousin, Lily, 12 and fearless, begged to go, her eyes gleaming with excitement. My parents, thrilled at the free outing, dropped us off, unaware of the shadow that ticket would cast over my life. The center buzzed with kids, but something felt off. The air was too thick, the staff's smiles too stiff. We played in the pool, splashing under the watchful eyes of a lifeguard whose gaze lingered too long. Her badge read, Clara, but her eyes were cold, almost vacant, like she saw through. Doris, as we played a breath-holding game, I felt a hand tap my shoulder. I surfaced expecting Lily, but it was Clara, her voice sharp. Knock it off, or you're out. Her touch was icy, lingering on my skin, and her smile didn't reach her. Lily shrugged it off, but I couldn't shake the unease. The pool felt claustrophobic, the water too still. Clara suggested we try the sauna to warm up, her tone oddly insistent. I hesitated, but Lily, always adventurous, pulled me along. The center's halls echoed with distant laughter, but as we followed Clara, the sounds faded, replaced by a low hum like a machine waking up. The ticket in my pocket felt heavy, a warning I didn't yet understand. We were walking into something, and it wasn't just a sauna. Clara led us to a heavy glass door, its frame etched with faint swirling patterns that seemed to shift in the dim light. The sauna's sign read 18 plus only, but she waved it off, her smile tight. She unlocked the door, cranked the thermostat, and stepped out, the lock clicking shut behind her. The room was warm, the wooden benches slick with condensation, but Clara's shadow lingered outside, her silhouette distorted through the glass. I nudged Lily, whispering, "Did she lock us in?" She laughed, but her eyes darted to the door. The heat climbed, a heavy blanket pressing on our chests. Within minutes, the air was scorching, the door refusing to budge despite our tugging. Sweat stung my eyes, my lungs burning with each breath. We pounded on the glass, screaming for Clara, but she stood at her post, staring straight ahead, unmoved by our cries. Her face was blank, her eyes glinting like polished stone, as if she didn't hear or didn't care. The steam thickened, curling into shapes, faces, hands, eyes, watching us from the haze. Lily's bravado cracked, her voice trembling as she banged harder. The walls seemed to pulse, the heat a living thing clawing at our skin. I saw it then, a faint figure in the steam, a child's outline, its head tilted, whispering my name. In a voice like rustling leaves, my scream echoed, but the figure dissolved, the steam tightening around us. The room was a furnace, and we were trapped, our pleas ignored by the woman who'd sealed us inside. Panic clawed at me, the tickets, weight in my pocket now a burning coal, tying me to this nightmare. The heat was unbearable, our screams hoarse, our bodies slick with sweat. My vision blurred, Lily slumping against the bench, her breath shallow. I pounded the glass, my fists raw, the steam now a choking fog, whispering our names in a chorus of ghostly voices. Suddenly, a man appeared outside, heading for the sauna. Clara unlocked the door for him, but as he stepped in, we shoved past, gasping for air. She pushed the door back, her face twisting, but he snapped, "They want out." She sighed, letting us flee. We stumbled into the locker room, collapsing, our bodies trembling, the ticket searing my skin through my pocket. We didn't speak, the terror too raw. Our parents picked us up, but I couldn't tell them. The words stuck in my throat. That day scarred me. I panic in tight spaces, my heart racing when it's too warm. The memory of that sauna, a wound that won't heal. Lily never spoke of it either, her eyes haunted when we met years later. I burned the ticket, but its symbols lingered in my nightmares, etched into my mind like a curse. At 21, I returned to Willow Creek, needing answers. The center was abandoned, its windows dark, but I snuck inside. In the sauna, the walls bore faint scratches, names, dates, pleas for help. A hidden panel revealed a ledger listing missing children, their visits tied to free passes like mine. Clara's name appeared, but no records of her existed. My blood ran cold. Was she human or something else, luring kids into that trap? I fled, the ledger heavy in my hands, its pages whispering as I ran. I'm still haunted, unable to be in confined spaces without seeing her face, feeling that heat. Sometimes in crowded rooms I catch a glimpse of Clara's cold eyes, watching from the shadows. Is she still out there waiting for her next guest? I don't know, but I'll never trust a free ticket again. I wanted to share a personal experience and happened to a whole bunch of campers up at Mariposa County, California. From years ago, it was a death camp when this happened in the summer, near the end of July, so something weird, very weird happened here. My name's Chloe, and at 13, I was a bundle of energy, thrilled to escape the city for a week at Camp Mariposa, a summer retreat nestled in the rugged mountains of California. The air was crisp, scented with pine and freedom, and the days were filled with laughter, canoeing, campfire songs, and ghost stories that felt harmless under the bright sun. Our camp was a sprawl of wooden cabins surrounded by towering trees that whispered in the breeze. A paradise for kids like me craving adventure. Our cabin, a rustic lodge with mesh windows, buzzed with the chatter of a dozen girls, our counselors, herding us like sheep through daily activities. By night, the mountains turned dark, the stars sharp against a velvet sky, and the camp took on a different life, one where shadows danced beyond the firelight. I loved it, the thrill of being away from home, the sense that anything could happen. But that summer, something did, something that turned our carefree haven into a place of fear, where the line between story and reality blurred. It was the last week of July, the air thick with heat and the promise of a meteor shower. We were planning a midnight stargazing hike, our counselors buzzing with excitement. But as dusk settled, a strange tension crept in. The birds fell silent, the wind stilled, and the camp felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I noticed it first. A faint glow in the distance, not from our cabins, but from an abandoned lodge deep in the woods. It wasn't supposed to be there, and it wasn't right. My stomach twisted, a warning I couldn't ignore, a sign that the mountains had secrets we weren't meant to see. The night was darker than usual, the moon hidden behind thick clouds, casting the camp in a shroud of shadows. We were gathered around the campfire, our faces lit by flickering flames, swapping stories about the Mariposa Phantom, a local legend we didn't really believe. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like a storm was brewing without rain. I glanced toward the woods, my eyes catching a faint glow, pulsing like a heartbeat from the abandoned cabin deep in the trees. One night, I noticed the cabin not being used off in the distance was just dancing with lights white and blue. From the inside, I was yelling out about it, but it was a death camp, so I had to wave everyone's attention to it, and our cabin staff were wondering what we were all seeing. "Hey, you see that?" I whispered to Ben, my bunkmate, pointing toward the light. He squinted, his face paling as the glow intensified, white and blue swirls spiraling like a silent aurora. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, his voice trembling. The other campers noticed, their chatter dying, replaced by gasps and pointed fingers. Pretty soon our whole cabin was getting way too excited, so some of them went to the other active cabins to explain what was going on, and they went out to meet some other staff so as to go and see what was happening at the isolated, unused cabin. Our counselor, Ms. Harper, tried to calm us, but her eyes betrayed her fear, darting toward the woods as if expecting something to emerge. The lights weren't natural. No flashlight could move like that. No campfire could pulse with such eerie rhythm. They danced, spiraled, then darted as if alive, beckoning us closer. My skin prickled, a mix of fear and fascination, like staring into a void that stared back. The camp was silent now, the only sound our ragged breaths and the distant hum of those lights. A sound that wasn't sound, more like a vibration in my bones. We stood frozen, a crowd of kids and counselors under a lamppost watching the impossible unfold, knowing we were witnessing something that didn't belong in our world. The lights in the abandoned cabin pulsed faster, their white and blue swirls, hypnotic, pulling us in like moths to a flame. We stood under the lamppost, a shivering crowd, as the counselors huddled, their whispers urgent. They started walking off towards the cabin in pairs of two, and we never saw the lights again. But we were watching them go to the cabins with their flashlights. Soon they started walking into the woods and separated out like it was a sort of search and rescue style operation, with their flashlights scanning the woods ahead of each of the pairs. Their beams cut through the darkness, but the glow from the cabin vanished abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence that pressed against my eardrums. We waited, breath held, as the pairs disappeared into the trees. Minutes dragged, the woods swallowing their lights, until a scream shattered the quiet. Ms. Harper, her voice raw with terror. The counselors stumbled back, flashlights shaking, their faces pale as ash. One of my staff said that he saw something twice. The size of him, and he's like 6 foot tall, was the color of a sort of white-gray color. And it ran by him so fast that he said that it was just not possible. In other words, it wasn't human. He couldn't make out any features or see any face. It was huge, she gasped. Gray-white, moving too fast like a blur, no face, no eyes. The words hit like a punch, and panic erupted. Kids clinging to each other, some crying, others frozen, staring into the woods where the thing had vanished. I saw it then. A flicker at the tree line, a shape too tall, too wrong, its limbs bent at angles that defied nature. It was gone in a heartbeat, but my blood ran cold, my legs rooted to the ground. The counselors herded us back to our cabins, their voices sharp with fear, but the darkness felt alive, watching, waiting. We locked the doors, but the memory of that faceless thing burned in my mind, a nightmare we couldn't wake from. That night at Camp Mariposa changed us all. Obviously, nobody really went to sleep that night until morning came, and the people in charge of the camp, or of the deaf camp program, were telling us in the morning that we can no longer go outside of our cabins after dinner. We huddled in our bunks, whispering about the lights, the creature, our eyes darting to the windows, expecting it to return. The counselors' faces were drawn, their reassurances hollow, and the camp's joy was gone, replaced by a fear that clung like damp fog. I never felt safe again, not under those trees, not under that sky. Years later, I can't shake the image of those lights, that faceless thing. I researched Mariposa's history, finding tales of strange sightings, lights in the woods, figures that vanished, stories older than the camp itself. Locals spoke of a presence in the mountains, something ancient, not human, that woke when the nights grew long. Was it a spirit, a cryptid, or something beyond our understanding? The lights, were they a lure, drawing us to it, or a warning to stay away? I'll never know, but I know what I saw, what Ms. Harper screamed, what shook us to our core. The woods of Mariposa hold secrets, and we were fools to think we could trespass without consequence. That summer taught me the world is bigger, stranger than we're told. Some places don't belong to us. Some lights don't guide, they hunt. If you ever find yourself in a mountain camp, where the stars burn too bright and the shadows move, keep your eyes down. Don't follow the glow, don't chase the unknown. You might see something that sees you back and it won't let you go. Have you ever witnessed a light that shouldn't be? A shape that defies reason? Share your story below, because the truth is out there, flickering in the dark. And trust me, you don't want to face it alone. Sometimes you need to lose yourself to find something. Peace, clarity, or just a moment to breathe. That's what I was chasing that day, a chance to escape the noise of the world. I'm Tessa, 19, a restless soul who'd always found solace in nature. I was living and working along the Gold Coast of Australia, a place where the ocean roared and the forests whispered secrets. I was in a pretty upset state of mind. my heart heavy with things I couldn't name. So I decided to go down to the beach to blow off some steam. But the beach wasn't enough. I needed more, a deeper solitude. So I veered inland, toward a forest trail I'd heard about, a winding path through ancient trees that promised quiet. I hadn't even bothered to put my shoes on and had gone down to the beach in my bare feet, the sand cool against my soles as I left the shore behind. I hadn't taken a phone with me, a reckless choice born of my need to disconnect. The trail was narrow, flanked by towering eucalyptus and tangled vines, the air thick with the scent of earth and salt. I walked on and on and on, my steps steady, my thoughts unraveling with each crunch of leaves. The forest was alive, birds calling, branches swaying. But as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of fire, a strange stillness settled in. I ended up hitting the end of the beach just as the sun was setting, and the trail grew darker, the trees closing in like silent sentinels. I should have turned back, but something urged me forward. A need to push past my limits, to face whatever was weighing me down. The path twisted, leading deeper into the forest, and I felt a shift, like the air itself was watching. My bare feet stung on the rough ground, but I ignored the pain, my breath steady, my eyes scanning the shadows. Then, I heard it, a faint rustle, not the wind, not an animal, but something deliberate, like steps matching mine. My heart quickened. I stopped listening, but the sound stopped too. Just my imagination, I told myself, shaking it off. But the feeling grew, a prickling at the back of my neck, a certainty that I wasn't alone. Someone, or something, was out there, hidden in the dark, and it knew I was here. The forest was a maze now, the path barely visible under the fading light. My bare feet ached, scraped raw by roots and stones, but I couldn't stop. The rustling had returned, closer now, a deliberate rhythm that shadowed my own. I quickened my pace, my breath ragged, my eyes darting to the trees. The pathway was no longer lit at this point, and the darkness had really started to feel suffocating. Every snap of a twig, every whisper of leaves felt like a warning. I told myself it was an animal, a trick of the mind, but the air was heavy, pressing against my skin like a living thing. Then I saw it. I froze because there was a figure looming in the darkness, a figure tall and dark, just beyond the next bend, where the path curved into shadow. It was so dark that I genuinely didn't see him until he was mere feet away from me. My heart slammed against my ribs, my body rooted to the spot. I think I say him too because he was tall with the build of a man. But there was something wrong, something unnatural. He was wearing a cloak with the hood pulled up, the fabric absorbing the last traces of light, making him a void against the forest. I stood paralyzed, my eyes locked on his back, praying he hadn't seen me. Had he heard me, then slowly, very slowly, he began to turn around. I couldn't breathe. As I looked into the pitch-black hole of the empty hood where this face should have been, I swiftly found out that yes, it was entirely possible, my fear spiking to a level I'd never known. There was no face, just a yawning darkness, a void that seemed to pull at my soul. I couldn't breathe now. Despite not being able to make out his face in the darkness, I knew that he was staring straight at me. My body screamed to run, but my legs were lead, trapped by that eyeless gaze. We stood watching each other in silence, the forest deathly still, as if it too was holding its breath. Then a sound, a low guttural hum, like a chant from deep within the earth, emanating from the figure. It wasn't human, wasn't natural, and it broke the spell. I bolted hard, my bare feet pounding the ground, branches tearing at my skin as I ran. I didn't turn around to see if he was following me, my only thought to escape, to survive. The path twisted, The forest a blur, but I kept going, driven by a primal instinct I didn't understand. I stumbled, my ankle twisting, but I didn't stop. The hum echoing behind me, growing fainter but never gone. Finally, I burst into a clearing, a small campsite with a flickering fire, where a group of hikers stared at me, wide-eyed. I collapsed, gasping, my body shaking, and they rushed to help, wrapping a blanket around me, their voices a distant hum as I tried to explain what I'd seen. The hikers were kind, their campfire a beacon in the dark, but I couldn't shake the chill that had settled into my bones. A kind couple who looked to be in maybe their 50s found me. They comforted me and gave me some fruit from their hotel room, I think, and drove me back to the hostel. I tried to explain, my words tumbling out in a frantic jumble. But how do you describe something that defies reason? That faceless void, that hum. It wasn't just a man, wasn't just a shadow. It was something else, something ancient, something that didn't belong in this world. They listened, their faces pale, and one of them, an older man named Tom, mentioned old Aboriginal stories about spirits that haunted the forests, guardians or predators, no one knew. His words sent a shiver down my spine, but I clung to them, desperate for any explanation. I was still trembling when they found me, my bare feet bloodied, my clothes torn. I won't ever forget their kindness and generosity too, a lifeline in the chaos of that night. Back at the hostel, I locked myself in my room, the hum still echoing in my ears, the memory of that eyeless gaze burning behind my lids. I do hope that if he didn't have sinister intentions, that he is well wherever he happens to be. But deep down, I knew the truth. Whatever it wasn't benevolent. I know that may be an odd thing to say, but you truly never know what someone's going through. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about someone's pain. It was about something darker, something that wanted me. Looking back now, I'm highly aware of the fact that my going off all alone was extremely unsafe on my part. I'd been reckless, chasing solitude without a phone, without telling anyone where I was going. I urge anyone reading this to always keep a phone on you at the very least for safety, and to always let loved ones know of your plans. That night changed me. I stopped wandering alone, started carrying a phone, a knife, anything to feel less vulnerable. But the fear lingered, a constant companion. I researched the forest, the Gold Coast's history, and found whispers of similar encounters. Hikers seeing shadows, hearing chants, vanishing into the trees. Some called it a myth, others a curse. But I knew what I'd seen, and it wasn't a story. Months later, I found a journal in a second-hand shop, its pages brittle, written by a ranger from the 1940s. He described a shadow man in the same forest, a faceless figure that appeared to those who strayed too far, its hum a warning or a lure. The last entry was unfinished, the ranger gone missing. My heart sank. Was it the same entity? Was it still out there, waiting? I burned the journal, hoping to sever any connection, but the hum haunts my dreams, a reminder that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I don't think that I'll ever forget this encounter, because it is now burnt into my brain. If you're ever in a forest feeling the world go quiet, trust that feeling. Run, don't look back. Because some things in the dark aren't just watching, they're claiming, and they don't let go. Winter break of 2015 was supposed to be a reprieve, a chance to escape the grind of college exams, and crash at my parents' house in suburban Ohio. I was 20, a sociology major named Olivia, eager to trade dorm life for home-cooked meals and familiar walls. I was in college, living at home with my parents and two brothers, and I'd fallen asleep in the family room, a part of the house added by previous owners. The house, a modest ranch built in the 1970s, had a newer wing tacked on in the 90s. Sprawling family room, a spare bedroom, and a laundry nook, all clustered in the back corner. My parents' house was built in the 70s, with an addition that included the family room, a bedroom, and the laundry room. I loved the family room, with its wide windows and plush couch, but it always felt off. The air was heavier there, the shadows deeper, like the addition didn't quite belong to the rest of the house. That first night, I sprawled on the couch, binge-watching old movies, the Christmas lights casting a warm glow. My brothers, Caleb and Hannah, were upstairs, and my parents were already asleep. As the TV flickered, a strange unease settled over me, a prickling sensation that I wasn't alone. I brushed it off as jet lag, but the room seemed to hum, a low vibration that set my teeth on edge, whispering that something was watching from the dark corners of the addition. As the night deepened, I dozed off, the TV's glow fading into darkness. I was having a perfectly normal dream when it shifted abruptly, like a broadcast alert cutting into a show. In the dream, I wandered a house, not ours, but eerily similar, with a Christmas tree casting long shadows. There was a sickly boy, small and frail, wearing a helmet, his head too large for his body, looking angry and sad. His eyes bored into me, accusing, as if I'd trespassed into his world. The dream felt heavy, oppressive, and I jolted awake, my heart racing, to find the family room pitch black. Then it happened. The entire house shook, a violent rumble that rattled the windows and vibrated through the floor. I froze, my breath catching. We didn't live in earthquake country, so this was impossible. The Christmas lights flickered, casting wild shadows, and a low groan echoed from the walls, like the house itself was in pain. I scrambled to my feet, expecting to hear my family's footsteps, but the silence was deafening. The air in the family room felt charged, electric, and I could have sworn I saw a faint green glow pulsing in the corner, where the addition met the original house. My skin prickled as I realized this wasn't just a dream or a quake. Something was wrong with this part of the house, something that didn't want me here. The shaking stopped as suddenly as it began, but the air grew colder, heavier, like a weight pressing on my chest. There, right in front of me, was a monster, a tangle of limbs, no face, just a writhing mass that seemed to pulse with malice. It loomed in the center of the family room, its form shifting, edges blurring like ink. Water. I felt like it wanted to hurt me, and I was completely panicked, unable to move. My body was locked, my screams trapped in my throat as its presence filled the room, a suffocating force that drowned out the world. I thought, is this really happening? How do I explain this to anyone? Then, a snap, like a cord breaking, and I could move again. I ran to the bedroom where my dad was sleeping, the closest person in the house, and woke him up, bawling like a baby. "Something's in the family room," I sobbed, my words tumbling over each other. Dad, groggy and confused, followed me back, but the room was empty, the lights steady, the air normal. He hugged me, muttering about nightmares, but his eyes lingered on the corner where I'd seen the thing. My heart pounded as I realized it hadn't left. It was still here, in the walls, in the addition, waiting. I swore I'd never sleep in that room again, but the fear followed me, a shadow I couldn't shake. The next morning, my family sat me down, their faces a mix of worry and disbelief. They thought I was having a mental breakdown, unable to process my story. I tried to explain, but the words sounded insane even to me. I never slept in the family room again, and guests who stayed there reported strange dreams, a lingering unease. I moved back to campus soon after, but the memory of that night clung to me like damp cloth. Years later, when my mom remodeled, they found a mummified kitten and a vintage black and white photo of a girl in the walls. The contractor was spooked, tossing them out, but Caleb sent me a picture. A pale child, her eyes hauntingly familiar, staring straight at the camera. Now 30, I've scoured records, piecing together fragments of the house's past. The discovery of the kitten and photo haunted me, raising questions I couldn't answer. The original owners, a family in the 70s, lost a daughter to illness. Her room sealed off until the addition was built. Locals whispered of a presence tied to the land, a restless spirit bound to the walls. I don't know if it was her or something darker, but that night changed me. Why did it show itself to me? Was it trapped or hunting? Some nights I feel its gaze, a cold weight in the dark, and I wonder, did it stay in the addition or did it follow me home? "15 stories. And if you're still here, you've just opened the door a little wider. These weren't entertainment. They were warnings. Whispers passed between the living and the lost. And now that you've heard them, they know. You may feel unsettled, like something followed you out of the story. A flicker in the hallway, a soft breath behind your shoulder. Don't worry, it's just your imagination. Probably, but if you want more, and most people do even if they deny it, the next video will go further, deeper, to the places these stories came from. Subscribe, stay close, and next time, bring someone with you. It's never wise to listen alone.